doing as I was confusing productivity with busyness. That's not the same. Being productive is actually pursuing a meaningful goal. It's doing only the essential work. It's working in a way that's effective in service of this broader goal. And it's also about having a life, a full, rich life. I mean, you don't work to live. I mean, what are you doing here?
Welcome to the Follow My Lead podcast, where we transfer stories and best practices of today's leaders to the leaders of tomorrow with your host, John Eads.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 4. Today we're joined by Carson Tate, an internationally renowned expert on workplace productivity, whose views have been featured in Bloomberg Businessweek, CBS Money Watch, Fast Company, Forbes, the New York Times, and USA Today. If that isn't enough, she's the author of Work Simply, Harnessing the Power of Your Personal Productivity Style, and she helps individuals and organizations all over the country improve their productivity in the workplace. I was so excited to have Carson on the show because who doesn't want to be more productive at work? It's a real weakness of mine as well as many other professionals. So why not learn what the best leaders are doing to maximize their most valuable resource, time? So take out a pad or open Evernote because these tips and tricks will help you the rest of your life. Just a quick housekeeping item. This podcast is brought to you by LearnLoft.com, an organization focused on helping the modern professional add value to their organization through leadership development programs and innovative learning technology. Well, Carson, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. I'm glad to be with you.
So for people that don't know Carson Tate, Working Smarter, Not Harder, the productivity expert, help the audience understand a little bit about you, your journey, where are you from, what's your family life like? Give us a little background.
Right. So I started my career in banking and then went into outside sales, and ultimately in that capacity realized I wanted to own my own business. I'm originally from South Carolina and now live in North Carolina and have a daughter and a dog who is my office mate and a great husband.
Well, great. I've long looked up to the progress that you've made and the help that you've provided to other people be more productive in their life. There's a story that you told about your daughter and this kind of momentous moment in your life, this breakthrough moment. Tell me that again.
So if I think about what drives me, it's always been about achievement and success and very goal-oriented. And I was pretty relentless in the pursuit of building my business and growing my brand, and had a daughter and made the decision right before she was born that nothing in my life was going to change, which is comical for lots of reasons. And so she was born 6 weeks after her birth. I got on a plane, flew to Arizona, and continued building my business. So I didn't stop. And so the entire first year of her life, I was building a consulting business. I was on the road, was writing, developing content. And then on December 26th, the day after Christmas, I was sitting in our den and I was working on some Christmas lights that weren't working properly. And I tried to physically stand up off the floor and I couldn't stand up. I realized that I was physically exhausted, was emotionally exhausted, and even my soul was tired. And 10 days before that, we had celebrated my daughter's first birthday. And as I sat on the floor and looking back on that year, I realized that I had no significant memories of her life and that first year of her life, and that I'd been working really hard, and that the name of my business is actually called Working Simply, which was a little comical. So I'm on the road working hard, trying to help people work simply, and my life is a complete and total mess. And in that moment, I realized that busyness is pretty barren. It's pretty isolating, and it doesn't lead to a rich, full life. And I had to make some personal changes in the way I was working and living. And if I could do that, then I could also be of better service to my clients.
Yeah, well, it sounds as though that got you beginning to think long term about what are the things that you can do to be more productive while still be there for the important moments of your child's life.
Exactly, because see, what I was doing is I was confusing productivity with busyness. That's not the same. Being productive is actually pursuing a meaningful goal. It's doing only the essential work. It's working in a way that's effective in service of this broader goal. And it's also about having a life, a full, rich life. I mean, you don't work to live. I mean, what are you doing here? So it helped me open up that space.
Why do you think as humans we do that? Why is busy, important to us?
Well, because busyness, and I think it fulfills both a psychological need as well as, I would say, an external need. So psychologically, we can feel important, valued, and needed. So if I'm in this meeting, I must be important. If my inbox has got 100 messages, I'm needed. So it fills that in us. But then it's also an absence of clear metrics around what defines success in organizations or personally. Busyness is the cop-out. So instead of doing the hard work, that intellectual work around what's really important, what's going to drive the business forward, what's going to really help you be the leader you want to be, we just get bogged down in busyness. Feels good, and it makes us feel as if we're doing something.
What are some of those things, like the things that come to mind to me personally, right? You wake up, you reach for your cell phone, and you're already in your inbox, right? Checking what's happened since you went to bed, and then your day is started then on somebody else's schedule.
Right.
That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Are there other things that professionals get caught up in that get them in this busyness track?
Email, yes, you nailed that. That's the first one. And the other one I would say is meetings. Even at as a new associate or a new employee, you get called and invited into a lot of meetings that just take a lot of time and are really unnecessary. And when you've got 20, 30 people in a room for an informational meeting, that is not the highest and best use of anyone's time. So when I tell folks, listen, the two places we always start to create space, we start in their inboxes and then we start with their calendar. Where are the meetings that don't have a high ROI for you, that you don't need to be there because you're not providing information or a decision? And let's start creating space there, and then we can go deeper into looking at the type of work that you're doing and really how to optimize it.
Well, that leads me into my next question. You've now worked with many organizations, many leaders in organizations. What are some of the things that the best leaders that you've seen do really well around productivity, not necessarily the negatives?
Mm-hmm. So the best leaders that I've worked with understand and use no. So they understand the power of no, and they use it very, very well. The other thing is that they're very, very...
Hold on. What would be an example of that? Because,
Yeah, that's great.
I think we all struggle with saying no to things and saying no, knowing when to say no. Does something come to mind where either someone's used it well or you've used it well?
So where it comes to mind with a leader I was working with last week, this leader was invited to participate in back to meetings, a very high-level meeting, where politically it would have added some value for him to be there. However, he didn't have the need to provide information. He wasn't making a decision. There were other things that required his time and attention, and this was going to take a significant amount of his time. So what he did really well is he gracefully said, thank you for the invitation. I cannot attend due to other commitments. However, I'd like to send this person on my team as a representative. So he not only protected his time, he used it as a developmental opportunity for a younger associate to go in his stead. So it was masterful on his part.
Is brilliant.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
So what he did is he still acknowledged that meeting hosts need to have a representative from his division, acknowledging that his contribution and the ROI really wasn't worth it, but then used it as an opportunity for his junior associate, to gain political exposure and represent that division. He was very confident that they could do it. It's masterful.
Yeah, and I mean, that's so much of what we believe good leadership to be is creating other leaders, not creating followers. And so you can see right there where he's showing an example to someone on his team of good time management.
Exactly.
Being able to say no, but providing an opportunity to someone that he believes needs it and will gain experience from it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
It's perfect.
It was masterful.
You've written, working your book.
Yeah, Work Simply.
Work Simply has done really well. A lot of people have really been drawn to its principles and best practices. Talk a little bit about the 4 productivity styles, or how you kind of approach productivity overall.
Right. So for me, productivity isn't a one-size-fits-all. In my early days working in banking, where I started my career, and then in outside sales, I realized that my approach to structuring my time and execution was different than my colleagues. And so my strategies might or might not work for them. And so I was looking for, how can I help everyone and really help them in a way that fundamentally fits the way that they think. So
I have to break you there.
Yes.
Did you start first by finding a fix for you? And did you assume that fix would work for everybody? Or did you just know that everybody had a different productivity style?
Well, I started with the premise that there were best practices in my field. So some organizational and productivity best practices that had worked for me, and I assumed would be have a universal application. They'd work for everyone. Quickly realized, both for me and my clients, that was not the case. And so that's what started me to think, well, how can I better serve my clients? We've got a problem to solve, and I need to help them. And so that's when I started digging into research around the way that we think, how that informs our workflow, that ultimately helped me arrive at what now is our fundamental philosophy, is that one size does not fit all. And if you want to be productive, you need to know your productivity style and then align strategies and tools to that. And so
what are they?
So there are 4 productivity styles: prioritizer, planner, arranger, and visualizer. The prioritizer and planner are very linear, very analytical, very data oriented. You might say they're more left brain in their thinking. The arranger and the visualizer are more intuitive, big picture, synthesizing. They're highly visual. You might say they're more right brain in their thinking. And so the visualizer loves mind maps. They want to see it. They want to be able to connect concept and ideas. The planner loves to-do list and checklist. So a checklist works great for a planner, but it would stifle the visualizer. Mm-hmm. So it's understanding yourself and then really tapping into the way you think.
How does a young professional, or even a new manager, someone manage a team, how do they get to know, is there a way to get to know what people's productivity styles are around you? I know you have an assessment, and I will point people to where they can go take that assessment to check out what their productivity style is. But does anything come to mind where you could visually see, or through experiences, what somebody else's productivity style is, so you can align correctly?
Yes. So we all give off clues. I call them cues and clues around our productivity style, because the power of your productivity style is that it's pretty baked in. I mean, this is the way you think. So
it's like your love language.
Very much so.
Well, it's so. I don't want to create your thought, but husbands, wives, couples, they have different love languages, and it's similar to that, right?
It's very similar to that. And so if you are a young leader wanting to work well with others and really distinguish yourself in your organization, your ability to understand how people work and how they work effectively, I think, is a very powerful game changer.
It's massive.
It's huge, because what you're able to do is align their strengths and minimize conflict. 2 of the things that are really going to propel you forward. And so what I tell folks to look for is that look for speech patterns, and then look at the way people write emails, because that's going to tell you a lot about their style. So for example, the prioritizer and the planner, their emails are very short. Oftentimes they don't have a salutation like, "Hi, John." They are clear on next action steps. They've got bullet points in them. There's a lot of structure. The arrangers and the visualizers, there's a salutation, "How are you?" So how was the vacation? How are the kids? There's a little story. And then eventually they're going to get to what they need. Lots of concepts, long paragraphs. But you can tell people write emails the same way over and over again. The other thing is to listen for prioritizers. Ask what questions. What's the goal? What's the outcome? What's the data? Planners are all about how. Process, procedures. How do you want me to do this? The arrangers are about the people. Who's involved? Who needs to know? And they're going to be asking you these questions. And then the visualizers, why? Why does it matter? Give me the context.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to know that professionals can gain a competitive advantage in the workplace by knowing what their productivity style is and the people around them that could potentially either help them to a promotion or help the people around you. I mean, it's almost a different way to think, and it goes along with everything that what good leaders do, and that is that they're looking for the people around them to help them. So if you understand what their productivity style is, then you can help them be more proficient in what it is they do, which is the name of the game.
Absolutely.
The not to segue too far, because we've been talking about young professionals, but this millennial generation and now even Generation Z in the workplace has taken a real interest in different forms of communication, from Twitter to Snapchat to just text messages. I mean, forget email. Let me just text message you.
Right.
How do you think that affects someone in the workplace? And do they have to, if it does affect them in the workplace, do they have to consciously think differently when they walk in that workplace to communicate more professionally?
I would say yes. And so I think this is an opportunity where the millennials and the Gen Z folks have an opportunity to look at workplace communication differently than their personal communication. What I see with our millennial clients is that they're kind of blending. I mean, the way they would text me or use Slack with me personally is how they're using it professionally. And it doesn't work, because you have to think about different generations in the workplace and also the constraints of the modality that you've chosen. So a text message doesn't have history, you can't use attachments, and it's usually very short and succinct. So that's great for confirming that I'm going to meet you in the lobby. It's not great if you're trying to introduce me to a new idea or solve a problem.
Or deliver a proposal.
That'd be abysmal, right?
Right.
And then I also think that you need to be thinking about the style of the person as well, the productivity style. There's a lot of folks that still want to talk to you. They want to talk to you on the phone, or they want to talk to you face to face. And if you are not willing to adjust your communication style to theirs, I think you're missing out on opportunities.
Well, it's fascinating to me to see the people that can. I'm not a huge proponent of just dropping the style in your personal life and completely changing it, because I think they bleed into each other, right?
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
But I think there's lessons for older generations to learn from how succinct, this generation communicates and how visual they are.
Absolutely.
And vice versa, where this younger generation can understand how to be a little bit more professional, how to be, hold yourself to a slightly different level than you currently are with your best buddy that you go out with, mm-hmm. To schedule the next social event. Mm-hmm. But I do think there's a tremendous opportunity for young professionals to differentiate themselves by taking an approach that isn't so much that's not a right word, but haphazard.
Yes.
Where it's like, I get that this is our corporate structure and I'm going to align to it because I know that's what will help elevate me in this organization.
Right. There's an intentionality and a purposefulness to it that as a young leader you choose, because it's going to help advance your career, and it's also going to help support the people around you. And I would say it helps you stand out. So for example, we were working with a group of millennials at a large consulting firm, and after our workshop, a couple of weeks later, we hear some feedback from one of the partners, and he said, I couldn't believe it, but Jim, we made up his name, Jim came into my office, he talked to me, he listened, he helped me think through a problem. He's like, outstanding. And so now Jim stands out from all the other associates as taking that step to come into his office. Jim did not necessarily want to do this, but he did it, and it differentiated him, and it also enabled him to move further on the project.
Yeah, it's another great example, real life thing that happened. A good friend of mine told this story about how he was at the bank, and they were getting ready to present a really big proposal to a group of executives. And this young professional really wanted to lead it. I mean, it was like his goal, his mission, his purpose. And so he gave him that opportunity. And they build it together. It's fantastic. The next morning comes, 8 a.m., meeting starts bright and early. All the executives are in the room. You know, this is a suit and tie culture. This guy comes in a golf shirt, right? And just because that was what he thought the workplace culture should be from a dress perspective, right? And all of a sudden, it didn't matter what he said from that point forward because he had missed the cue that I have to align to this culture to be able to make an impact.
Exactly. And so in that story, I want to make sure that your listeners are hearing that in no way, I don't think you nor I are saying that we don't want you to be you and the full expression of you. What we're saying is the recognition of the culture in which you work and tempering or slightly adjusting so that nothing detracts from your goal of being a leader. And I always say, just do the simple stuff. Like if everyone has shorter hair as males, it might not be your preference, but let's just take it off the table so that we can let your talents
be highlighted. It really is then about communication because if you can align to some degree, you don't have to lose who you are, but you'll be able to communicate more effectively, which gets your ideas across, which helps you progress, which helps you make an impact. So whether it's emails, productivity, how you dress, it's the ability for the other person to be open to communicate with you in a more effective way. Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to some fun stuff to close. It's been said that your life are the small things repeated daily. What are some of the things that you personally do as someone that runs a business, has a kid, is married, busy woman? What are some of the things that you do to improve yourself?
Mm-hmm. So I learned this the hard way, but one of them is to really have fun and to push my envelope. So one of the things that I, as an entrepreneur, frequently face is that fear. Is it going to succeed? Am I going to fail? What's going to happen? And so I consistently look for opportunities to push the envelope and make myself as uncomfortable as possible and have fun while doing it. So for example, my friend and I just got back from climbing the Grand Teton. I was scared to death, outside my comfort zone, but really powerful in terms of the sense of accomplishment. You can do it, and then translating that back into my life,
into what you do
and what I do.
So an example there is you're seeking out experiences or things that you can do to stretch your comfort zone.
Just stretch my comfort zone, obviously.
Are there any books that have made a big impact, or do you read a lot or not?
I do. I love books, and so I would recommend three of my favorites. One is called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And his whole premise is that we get lost in the shallows, the email, the meetings, and that we really need to configure our work lives so that we're doing that deep creative work. That's how you're going to distinguish yourself. The second one would be Essentialism by Greg Cohen. I think I said his name right. Helping you define what's really essential, because this activity for activity's sake isn't helpful. So what's the core essence of the job that you're doing and really your unique strengths? And then the third one is kind of out there, but it's the 5 regrets of the dead and dying. Sounds a little morbid, but it's actually pretty uplifting. Yeah. But it helps with that focus around that it is about living fully. And there's a bigger life here, and we're here in service of others. And that kind of grounds out.
That's beautiful.
Work.
It's great. You mentioned you're a mom.
I'm a mom, yes.
What's harder? Leading at work or leading at home? And there might not be a right answer, but I like to put you on the spot.
That's a great one. What you can't see is that I'm blushing now thinking, I don't know. Well, what I can say, I think at times it's leading at home. Just the recognition, I've got a 5.5-year-old and she's like a sponge. And it's a 24/7 job. She's always watching, always observing. And there are moments where I'm just flailing and failing miserably. and she's absorbing it. And it's different than my professional life, where I at least try with my employees.
You probably have a little more control.
I definitely have a little more control at work too. With
the 5.5-year-olds they have a mind of their own a lot of times.
And mine definitely does, which I love, but she definitely does. Right. So I'm going to say leading at home is hard.
Well, it's actually a recurring answer, which is funny.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
If you could have dinner with any 3 leaders, living or dead, who would be at your table?
Mm-hmm. The first one would probably be Buddha, which would be Siddhartha. Just his, I think what he offered in terms of loving kindness and the power of introspection and mindfulness is so needed today, and just the connection of humanity. I would say Oprah. I so respect her as a businesswoman. I think she also has broken a lot of barriers, and her business is clearly based in service for others. And the third one, who would I put in there? I think I might say Winston Churchill for grit and resiliency, and I also think he was just masterful at storytelling and compelling visuals, and he had a very challenging job.
Yeah, he did. Well, it's an interesting group. Buddha,
that would be a very
Oprah and Churchill. I mean, I'd join you for dinner.
I'd love to have them all. So we'll see if we can get some folks to come back from the dead.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. How can people find out more about what you're doing? Where can they find you online? We'll put all this in the show notes as well. But
sure.
Where can they find the book? The website?
So the website is carsontate.com. I would encourage you all to take the assessment. There's an assessment tab so you can find out your productivity style. The book is Work Simply, Embracing the Power of Your Personal Productivity Style. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you can find it anywhere. And then on Twitter or LinkedIn, Facebook, it's at the Carson Tate.
Okay, good. We'll be sure to send people there. We really appreciate you being here, and thanks for sharing such good insight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of the Follow My Lead podcast. It's a real honor and pleasure to bring you stories and best practices to help you perform better at work and at home. You can continue to educate yourself at learnloft.com. There's free resource section, as well as old podcast episodes, blogs, and even a free trial of our Getting Leadership Ready program, as well as our High Performance Leadership program to help you perform better at work. Until next time, remember, you don't need permission to lead.